When Clint Eastwood watched a small-town news clip on his phone, he had no idea it would lead to one of the most powerful moments of his life. It featured a single mother quietly battling a terminal illness while being denied the basic help she needed to survive. What Clint did next stunned the nation, because he didn't just share her story, he showed up, spoke out, and sparked a movement that shook the system to its core. In true Clint Eastwood fashion, he turned one woman's silent struggle into a nationwide reckoning, and what followed became a legacy no one saw coming. The morning sun cast long, golden lines across the faded wood floor of a modest home tucked away in the quiet hills of rural California. Emily Carter moved through the kitchen with practiced grace, pouring cereal for her youngest while nudging her teenage son awake with the back of her hand. Life wasn't easy, but she'd gotten good at juggling it all: 2 kids, a patchwork of part-time jobs, and the endless balancing act of making too little stretch too far. Emily was 38, but wore the years heavier than her age suggested. The laughter in her eyes hadn't dimmed, but fatigue clung to her like a shadow. Still, she smiled through it, because that's what mothers do. The clinic was quiet that afternoon, a cold kind of quiet, the kind that clings to sterile walls and makes time feel slower. Emily sat across from Dr. Ramirez, a woman she'd known for years, one of the few constants in a life filled with change. "I wish I had better news," the doctor began, her voice soft but steady. She held a folder in her hand like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Emily listened, her breath caught somewhere between hope and dread. "Stage 4, terminal, aggressive." The words landed like lead in her stomach. "How long?" she asked, the question coming out smaller than she meant. "Months," Dr. Ramirez said. "Maybe 6. For a long moment, Emily said nothing, just stared at the beige wall behind the doctor's head as if it could offer her some kind of answer or escape. "I can refer you to palliative care," the doctor added gently. "But, Emily, you need to think about quality of life, about support. I'd strongly recommend applying for disability benefits as soon as possible. It'll help cover treatment, rent, and care for the kids." Emily nodded, the motion slow, mechanical. Outside, the world carried on. Cars passed, kids laughed in schoolyards, and life continued as if nothing had changed. But for Emily Carter, everything had. She walked out of the clinic that day not just as a mother or a waitress or a survivor of life's many blows. She walked out as a woman racing a clock. The paperwork sat on the kitchen table for days before Emily touched it. A thick stack of forms printed in grayscale, asking the same questions in 100 different ways. Describe the nature of your condition. How does it impact your ability to work? Provide documentation from a licensed physician. Her hands trembled as she filled them out, unsure if she was writing her future or signing away what little control she had left. She attached lab reports, notes from Dr. Ramirez, and her employment history. There were gaps, sure, years spent raising kids, caring for her own ailing mother, and jobs that paid in cash under the table. Life didn't come with neat records, but still, she hoped. Weeks passed. Her body weakened. Hair began to fall out in strands like quiet threads of her identity slipping away. She'd stopped working, not by choice, but because she couldn't stand long enough to pour coffee or clear tables. She waited for the envelope that might offer a lifeline. Then, on a Wednesday that felt colder than most, it came. A thin, white letter with the Social Security seal in the corner. Emily held it for a long moment before opening it, already sensing the answer in the paper's weight. "We regret to inform you that your claim has been denied." The words blurred as her eyes filled with tears. "Due to insufficient documentation. Applicant does not meet work history eligibility." It didn't matter that she was dying, that she had children who needed her, that the doctor's note explicitly said terminal. The system saw only numbers, boxes unchecked. She sank to the floor of her kitchen, the letter still in her hands. Her daughter peeked in from the hallway, sensing something wasn't right. Emily turned away, shielding her tears. She wasn't just scared now, she was angry. Angry that after all the years she'd given to everyone else, there was nothing coming back when she needed it most. No one was coming to save her. And still, she had 2 kids to protect. So she wiped her face, stood up slowly, and began looking for a new plan. Even if the world had already told her she wasn't worth helping. The mornings came earlier now, not because the sun rose any sooner, but because Emily couldn't sleep, not with the weight in her chest or the quiet pain that spread like wildfire through her bones. Still, every day she pulled herself from bed, wrapped a scarf around her thinning hair, and put on a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her kids, Lily and Marcus, didn't ask too many questions. Lily, only 7, just knew her mom got tired faster these days. Marcus, 13, and too observant for his own good, carried a silent concern in his eyes. But he said nothing. He'd already taken on more than a child should, packing lunches, helping his sister with homework, and learning how to make simple dinners when Emily couldn't get off the couch. She told them it was just a bug, that she'd be back to her old self soon. But inside, she knew better. She still worked when she could, weekend shifts at the diner, short stints cleaning houses, anything to keep some money coming in. The painkillers barely took the edge off, and by nightfall, she could barely stand. But the bills didn't stop, and neither did the hunger in her children's eyes. Neighbors dropped off casseroles now and then. Her church tried organizing a food drive, but there were too many struggling families and too few resources to go around. Her best friend, Carla, offered to help watch the kids, but she had her own hands full with 3 of her own. Emily started skipping treatments to stretch what little she had. Every dollar became a choice: groceries or gas, medication or rent. She never let the kids see her cry. Instead, she tucked them in at night, kissed their foreheads, and whispered promises she wasn't sure she could keep. "I'll be okay," she said, again and again, like a mantra, like a prayer. But each morning, as the sun rose over their worn-out home and the world expected her to carry on, the truth became harder to hide. Her strength was running out, but her love for them wasn't. It started with a PTA meeting. Emily wasn't there. She hadn't been able to leave the house for days, but someone mentioned her name during a discussion about the upcoming school fundraiser. How she was going through a rough time. How her boy Marcus had been showing up late, tired, and quiet. How Lily wore the same sweater to school 3 days in a row. Jessica Tran, a young reporter from Channel 9 News, was there covering community events. She wasn't expecting a story, just the usual bake sale, maybe a quote from a well-meaning principal. But something about the way people spoke Emily's name stuck with her. She made a few calls, spoke to Carla, visited the diner where Emily used to work. It didn't take long before she had the bones of a story, and the sense that it needed to be told. When Jessica knocked on Emily's door with a camera crew the following afternoon, Emily hesitated. She was exhausted, embarrassed, and more than anything, afraid of how people might see her. But when Jessica said, "I just want people to understand what you're going through," something in Emily softened. She agreed. They filmed in the living room. Emily spoke quietly but clearly, her voice laced with both dignity and fatigue. She explained her diagnosis, the denial letter, the daily battle to pretend things were okay for her kids. Jessica kept the piece raw. No dramatic music, no flashy editing, just a woman fighting for her life in the shadows of a system that didn't see her. The segment aired the next night on the 6 o'clock news under the title, "Mother of 2 Denied Disability While Battling Terminal Illness." It hit hard. Local viewers responded first. Comments flooded the station's Facebook page. Donations trickled into a GoFundMe set up by Carla. Teachers hugged Marcus the next day. A woman dropped off a bag of groceries at their front door. The story made its way online, shared by advocates and strangers alike. It didn't explode right away, but it stirred something. A spark, a quiet anger in the hearts of people who'd seen this happen too many times. And in the digital shuffle of tweets and shares and reposts, one man watching from his ranch outside Carmel paused. Clint Eastwood had just seen Emily Carter's face. By the end of the week, the local news clip had racked up a few thousand views, mostly from people in nearby counties and small towns where stories like Emily's weren't uncommon. But something about her eyes, her quiet strength, and the unbearable unfairness of it all stuck with viewers. Then came the share that changed everything. Melanie Brooks, a healthcare advocate and policy analyst based in Sacramento, stumbled across the video late one night. She'd spent years lobbying for disability reform and had seen countless cases, too many like Emily's. But this one felt different. Maybe it was the way Emily smiled through her pain. Maybe it was Lily's voice in the background, singing to her doll while the camera panned across the living room. Melanie didn't just share it, she wrote a thread that went deep. "This is Emily Carter. She's 38. She's dying. And our system told her she doesn't qualify for help. Watch this, then tell me this isn't broken." The post began to move, slowly at first. Retweets, comments, reposts. People shared their own horror stories. Disabled veterans, chronically ill parents, children caring for sick mothers. And then someone tagged at Clint Eastwood official. Just one line. "You fight for the underdogs. This one needs a voice like yours." No one expected a response. Celebrities got tagged in everything. But this time, something stuck. Because halfway across the state, Clint Eastwood was in his study, sipping black coffee and scrolling through his phone before bed. He wasn't much for social media, but every now and then, something would catch his eye. The video auto-played. He almost skipped it. Almost. But then he saw Emily, sitting in her worn-out chair, speaking softly about her kids, the stack of denial papers sitting untouched beside her. Clint's hand froze over the screen. He watched the whole thing twice. Then, without hesitation, he reached for his assistant. "Get me a camera," he said, voice low and steady. "We're going to say something." The video hit the internet like a thunderclap. It was just Clint, standing in front of a stone fireplace at his ranch. No music, no script. Just a raw, unfiltered message, delivered with the gravelly authority that had made him a legend, but softened by something more powerful: conviction. "I just watched a story that made my blood boil," he began, voice steady but edged with emotion. A mother, terminal cancer, denied disability, told by the system she wasn't sick enough to deserve help. That's not just wrong, that's a disgrace. He paused, eyes locked on the camera. "I've spent my life playing tough guys, cowboys, soldiers, but this isn't a movie. This is real. This is a woman trying to survive long enough to see her kids grow up, and the government is telling her she's not worth the paperwork." He leaned forward slightly, hands braced on the mantel. "I'm calling on every elected official, every agency involved, to look at this and ask yourself, what if it was your mother, your sister, your daughter?" He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I'm going to help Emily, personally, and I'm going to make damn sure someone answers for why she was ignored." He signed off with a simple line. "We don't turn our backs on people like this, not on my watch." Within minutes, it was everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. National headlines lit up with phrases like "Clint Eastwood blasts disability system" and "Hollywood legend demands justice for dying mother." The original clip of Emily's story surged past 5 million views by midnight. Celebrities reposted Clint's video. Activists launched petitions. Hashtags exploded. "Help Emily," "Eastwood for Emily," "Fix the system." And in a small house tucked away in rural California, Emily sat on the couch in silence, tears rolling down her cheeks as she watched the video. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel invisible. For the first time, someone powerful was standing beside her. The next morning, Emily woke to the sound of her phone buzzing nonstop. Texts, emails, missed calls. Her GoFundMe, once stagnant at a few $100s, had surged past $80,000 overnight. By noon, it was over $250,000. Across the country, something had shifted. People weren't just watching, they were moving. Hashtags trended globally. Justice for Emily. Disability is not a debate. They weren't just slogans, they were rallying cries. Famous actors tweeted their support. A-list singers posted Instagram stories with links to her fundraiser. Athletes wore shirts with her name on them during warm-ups. Talk show hosts mentioned her on air. But it wasn't just celebrities. A mother in Ohio donated $20 with a note. "I've been in your shoes. Keep fighting." A veteran from Texas wrote, "The system failed me too. You're not alone." A little girl from Utah sent a hand-drawn card with a rainbow and stick figure, Emily holding hands with her kids. It simply read, "You are loved." An army had formed, not one with weapons or uniforms, but with empathy. Meanwhile, a prestigious Los Angeles law firm stepped up, announcing pro bono representation for Emily and others like her. A team of lawyers specializing in disability rights was now reviewing every inch of her case, and they weren't pulling punches. The firm released a public statement calling her denial a gross miscarriage of justice. The pressure was impossible to ignore. Calls flooded local government offices. Online petitions racked up hundreds of thousands of signatures. Journalists began digging, finding others like Emily, with equally devastating stories. News outlets, once silent, now ran nightly updates. Emily Carter wasn't just a headline anymore, she was a movement. And the system that had tried to ignore her? It was suddenly backed into a corner. By the time Monday rolled around, the Social Security Administration could no longer stay silent. A press conference was hastily arranged. Suited officials stood behind a podium, shuffling papers and trying to project calm. "We are aware of the recent concerns regarding Ms. Emily Carter's disability claim," the spokesperson said, reading from a carefully crafted statement. "In light of new information and evolving circumstances, her application is being reevaluated and expedited." But the damage had already been done. The public wasn't buying the sudden shift in tone. It wasn't new information that changed things. It was a viral storm, and Clint Eastwood calling them out in front of the world. Emily's file, once buried in a pile of red tape, was now at the top of every inbox. Behind the scenes, bureaucrats scrambled. Phones rang off the hook. Congress members were getting calls from constituents demanding action. How many more Emilys are out there? Became the question, echoing through Washington. And then the unthinkable happened. Clint Eastwood received a formal invitation from the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services. They asked him to testify, not as an actor, not as a director, but as a citizen who had sparked a national reckoning. He accepted. Standing in a crisp suit, days later in Washington, D.C., Clint addressed the panel with the same quiet authority he used in his viral video. "This isn't about one woman," he said, looking directly at the senators. "It's about a system that forgets the people it's supposed to protect. You don't fix this with press releases. You fix it with action." The room was silent. Emily, watching from home, held her children close as tears filled her eyes. This fight had started with a letter. Now, it was shaking the foundations of the very system that had failed her. The approval letter came on a Thursday morning. This time it was printed on thick paper, enclosed in a large envelope with embossed lettering. Emily didn't need to open it to know. It felt different, weightier, intentional. Her benefits had been approved: full coverage, immediate back pay, retroactive to the day of diagnosis, medical bills, child care assistance, monthly support. Everything she had begged for just weeks ago, now arriving in a neat packet of too late promises. She held the envelope to her chest, closed her eyes, and exhaled. Not relief exactly, but something close. A soft letting go. With the help of her new legal team and Clint's financial advisors, Emily set up trust accounts for Lily and Marcus. Each account was protected long-term with stipulations for education, housing, and support. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to imagine their futures: college, a home, a life without survival hanging on every dollar. And then Clint came. No cameras, no press, just him, in a denim jacket and weathered boots, standing at her front door with a bouquet of simple daisies. Emily was too tired to stand, so he sat beside her. No speeches, no small talk. Just two people sharing a quiet moment that said more than words could. "You changed things," Clint told her, "and not just for you." Emily smiled weakly, her hand resting over his. With the help of a friend, she later recorded a short video, her final message. She wore a simple headscarf and a faint smile. "I didn't expect any of this," she said softly. "I just wanted to be heard. If you're fighting this fight, please don't stop. Don't let them tell you that you don't matter. Because you do. We all do." The video spread quickly, shared by millions, not out of pity, but out of respect. Emily Carter, the single mom from a quiet town, had become something far more powerful, a voice no one could ignore. Emily passed away on a cool November morning. The leaves outside her window had just begun to fall, quiet and golden, like a final blessing. She was surrounded by her children, Carla, and the hospice nurse who had come to feel like family. The room was peaceful, no machines, no alarms, just the sound of Marcus reading softly from a book she used to love. She slipped away, holding Lily's hand. No fear, no pain, just love. News of her passing spread fast. Hashtags returned to the top of trending lists, not out of outrage this time, but remembrance. Candlelight vigils were held in towns she'd never visited. People sent letters to her children. Legislators read her story on the Senate floor. She had become a symbol, not of tragedy, but of transformation. 1 week later, Clint Eastwood stood on a stage in San Francisco, announcing the launch of the Emily Carter Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to advocating for disability rights, healthcare reform, and support for terminally ill parents. "This foundation isn't just for Emily," he told the crowd. "It's for everyone the system forgot." She reminded us that real strength doesn't shout. It endures, it protects, it loves. The crowd stood in silence, many wiping tears, as a large screen behind him played Emily's final video message. Across the country, reforms were introduced. Case reviews were ordered. A backlog of denied claims, some decades old, were finally given second chances. And somewhere in a modest house now cared for by relatives, 2 children looked at a photo of their mother smiling. They knew the world would never be the same, because their mom had spoken up, and people had finally listened. This story was intense, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.